Hi. Welcome to the History House. I'm Ahmed Saeed and you are watching the History of the 19th of October on your favorite The History House YouTube channel. Please like this video and subscribe the channel for the importance of the day, success stories as well as the failure stories around the world on daily basis. October 19th is the 292nd day of the year, 293rd in leap years in the Gregorian calendar. 73 days remain until the end of the year. The schedules of the Niue Constitution Act 1974 form the Niue Constitution. It stipulates the makeup of the executive branch of the government, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The Niue Constitution Act 1974 is the supreme law of Niue. Any other Niue law that is inconsistent with the Niue Constitution Act 1974 will be deemed to be invalid. Its granting by the New Zealand Parliament in 1974 is celebrated yearly as Niue's independence on Constitution Day on the 19th of October. The road towards self-government for Niue started with the UN Decolonization Committee putting pressure on New Zealand for Niue to decide what form of status Niue wanted. Mother Teresa Day has been observed on this day in Albania. Mother Mary Teresa Boyajiu, honored in the Catholic Church as Saint Teresa of Calcutta, was an Albanian Indian Roman Catholic nun and missionary. She was born in Skopje, now the capital of North Macedonia, then part of the Kosovo Vilayet of the Ottoman Empire. After living in Skopje for 18 years, she moved to Ireland and then to India, where she lived for most of her life. Teresa received a number of honors, including the 1962 Ramon Magsaysay Peace Prize and 1979 Nobel Peace Prize. Same day 202 BC, Second Punic War, at the Battle of Zama, Roman legions under Scipio Africanus defeat Hannibal Barca, leader of the army defending Carthage. Same day 439 the Vandals, led by King Gaiseric, take Carthage in North Africa. Gaiseric, also known as Gaiseric or Genseric, was king of the Vandals and Alans 428–477, a kingdom he established, and was one of the key players in the difficulties faced by the Western Roman Empire during the 5th century. Through his nearly 50 years of rule, he raised a relatively insignificant Germanic tribe to the status of a major Mediterranean power. His most famous exploit, however, was the capture and plundering of Rome in June 455. 1216 King John of England dies at Niuean-on-Trent and is succeeded by his 9-year-old son Henry. 1386 The Universität Heidelberg holds its first lecture, making it the oldest German university. 1453 Hundred Years' War, 3 months after the Battle of Castillon, England loses its last possessions in southern France. 1466 The 13 Years' War between Poland and the Teutonic Order ends with the Second Treaty of Thorn. 1469 Ferdinand II of Aragon marries Isabella I of Castile, a marriage that paves the way to the unification of Aragon and Castile into a single country, Spain. 1512 Martin Luther becomes a doctor of theology. Martin Luther, OSA, was a German professor of theology, priest, author, composer, Augustinian monk, and a seminal figure in the Reformation. Luther was ordained to the priesthood in 1507. He came to reject several teachings and practices of the Roman Catholic Church. In particular, he disputed the view on indulgences. Luther proposed an academic discussion of the practice and efficacy of indulgences in his 95 Theses of 1517. His refusal to renounce all of his writings at the demand of Pope Leo X in 1520 and the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V at the Diet of Worms in 1521 resulted in his excommunication by the Pope and condemnation as an outlaw by the Holy Roman Emperor. 1579 James VI of Scotland is celebrated as an adult ruler by a festival in Edinburgh. 1596 The Spanish ship San Felipe runs aground on the coast of Japan and its cargo is confiscated by local authorities. 1649 New Ross Town in Ireland surrenders to Oliver Cromwell. 1781 American Revolutionary War, the Siege of Yorktown comes to an end. 1789 John Jay is sworn in as the first Chief Justice of the United States. 1805 War of the Third Coalition, Austrian General Mack surrenders his army to Napoleon at the Battle of Ulm. 1812 – The French invasion of Russia fails when Napoleon begins his retreat from Moscow. 1813 – War of the Sixth Coalition – Napoleon is forced to retreat from Germany after the Battle of Leipzig. 1864 – American Civil War – The Battle of Cedar Creek ends the last Confederate threat to Washington, D.C. 1864 – American Civil War – Confederate agents based in Canada rob 3 banks in St. Albans, Vermont. 1866 – In accordance with the Treaty of Vienna, Austria cedes Veneto and Mantova to France, which immediately awards them to Italy in exchange for the earlier Italian acquiescence to the French annexation of Savoy and Nice. 1900 – Max Planck discovers Planck's law of black body radiation. 1912 – Italo-Turkish War – Italy takes possession of what is now Libya from the Ottoman Empire. 1914 – First World War – The First Battle of Ypres begins. 1921 – The Portuguese Prime Minister and several officials are murdered in the Bloody Night coup. 1922 – British Conservative MPs vote to terminate the coalition government with the Liberal Party. 1935 – The League of Nations places economic sanctions on Italy for its invasion of Ethiopia. 1943 – The cargo vessel Sinfra is attacked by Allied aircraft at Crete and sunk. 2098 – Italian prisoners of war drown with it. 1943 – Streptomycin, the first antibiotic remedy for tuberculosis, is isolated by researchers at Rutgers University. 1944 – United States forces land in the Philippines. The Battle of Leyte in the Pacific campaign of World War II was the amphibious invasion of the island of Leyte in the Philippines by American forces and Filipino guerrillas under the overall command of General Douglas MacArthur, who fought against the Imperial Japanese Army in the Philippines led by General Tomoyuki Yamashita. The operation, codenamed King II, launched the Philippines Campaign of 1944–45 for the recapture and liberation of the entire Philippine archipelago and to end almost 3 years of Japanese occupation. 1944 – A coup is launched against Juan Federico Ponce Vides, beginning the 10-year Guatemalan Revolution. 1950 – China defeats the Tibetan army at Shambo. The Battle of Chamdo occurred from 6 through 19 October 1950. It was a military campaign by the People's Republic of China (PRC) to take the Chamdo region from a de facto independent Tibetan state after months of failed negotiations on the status of Tibet. The campaign resulted in the capture of Chamdo and further negotiations between the PRC and Tibetan representatives that eventually resulted in the annexation of Tibet by the People's Republic of China. 1950 Korean War – The Battle of Pyongyang ends in a United Nations victory. Hours later, the Chinese army begins crossing the border into Korea. 1950 Iran becomes the first country to accept technical assistance from the United States under the Point 4 program. 1956 The Soviet Union and Japan sign a joint declaration, officially ending the state of war between the two countries that had existed since August 1945. 1960 The United States imposes a near-total trade embargo against Cuba. 1973 President Nixon rejects an appeals court decision that he turn over the Watergate tapes. 1974 Niue becomes a self-governing colony of New Zealand. Its granting by the New Zealand Parliament in 1974 is celebrated yearly as Niue's independence on Constitution Day on 19 October. The road towards self-government for Niue started with the UN Decolonization Committee putting pressure on New Zealand for Niue to decide what form of status Niue wanted. 1984 A Roman Catholic priest, Jerzy Popilowsko, associated with the Solidarity Union, is killed by 3 agents of the Polish Communist Internal Intelligence Agency. 1986 The President of Mozambique and a prominent leader of FRELIMO, along with 33 others, die when their aircraft crashes into the Lubombo Mountains. 1987 The United States Navy conducts Operation Nimble Archer, an attack on 2 Iranian oil platforms in the Persian Gulf. 1987 Black Monday – The Dow Jones Industrial Average falls by 22%, 508 points. 1988 The British government imposes a broadcasting ban on television and radio interviews with members of Sinn Féin and 11 Irish Republican and Ulster Loyalist paramilitary groups. 1989 – The convictions of the Guildford Four are quashed by the Court of Appeal of England and Wales, after they had spent 15 years in prison. 2001 SIEVX, an Indonesian fishing boat en route to Christmas Island, carrying over 400 migrants, sinks in international waters with the loss of 353 people. 2003 Mother Teresa is beatified by Pope John Paul II. 2004 13 people are killed when corporate airlines Flight 5966 crashes in Adair County, Missouri, whilst on approach to Kirksville Regional Airport. 2005 Saddam Hussein goes on trial in Baghdad for crimes against humanity. The Iraqi Special Tribunal started the trial of deposed President of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, and 7 other defendants for crimes against humanity. Hussein, who was the 5th president of Iraq, was found guilty and was executed by hanging a year later on December 30, 2006. 2005 Hurricane Wilma becomes the most intense Atlantic hurricane on record with a minimum pressure of 882 MB. 2012 A bomb explosion kills 8 people and injures 110 more in Lebanon. On 19 October 2012, Wissam al-Hassan, a brigadier general of the Lebanese Internal Security Forces (ISF) and the head of its intelligence-oriented information branch, died along with several others killed by a car bomb in the Akrifi district of Beirut. The killing of a senior figure closely linked with the anti-Assad camp in Lebanon led to immediate speculation that Syria, or its allies, were behind the attack in Beirut. Al-Hassan had also led the investigation that implicated Syria and its ally Hezbollah in the killing of the former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. 2013 At least 105 people are injured in a train crash in Buenos Aires. The Buenos Aires train crash occurred on October 19, 2013 when a passenger train failed to stop at a terminal station in Buenos Aires, Argentina, injuring 105 people. Births on this day, the 19th of October. 1962 Evander Holyfield, American boxer. 1958 Michael Steele, American politician, 7th Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. 1946 Philip Pullman, English author. 1945 John Lithgow, American actor. 1944 Peter Tosh, Jamaican singer-songwriter, guitarist. Deaths on this day, the 19th of October. 1893 Lucy Stone, American activist. 1813 Joseph Poniatowski, Polish general. 1745 Jonathan Swift, Irish author. 1682 Thomas Browne, English author. 1216 John, King of England. Thanks a lot for watching the History House YouTube channel. Please like this video and subscribe the channel for latest stories on daily basis.